And we're live, broadcasting live from Ocean Grove, New Jersey, here on the Jersey Shore. And we're delighted that you can join us for Music Matters 2020, our unique podcast community, where we discuss music in 2020 and all the challenges that are being faced today and the innovations being made by great artists, which has been a great inspiration for me, and I'm delighted that I can share that with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and hit that bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Also, like our videos, as that does help us. And thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to have a wonderful pianist tonight, Mr. Jeffrey Beagle, who is a renowned concert artist, a concerto performer in both traditional repertoire and also he's one of the go-to pianists for premiering new work. So we're going to discuss that. Welcome, Jeffrey Beagle. So
Hello,
glad you
how
could
are you?
join
Nice
us
to
today.
see you.
You've had such a wonderful career, and so tell us about your development as an artist. How did you start playing the piano? How young were you when you first were introduced to the instrument?
Yeah, I started when I was about 3 years old, 4 years old. Just went and plucked out tunes and figured out left-hand melodies to go with them. Couldn't hear when I was little, but I had surgery to fix that. So
I
basically,
did see
music
that
is
in
my
your
first
bio that
language.
you had like a
And,
reverse Beethoven experience.
yeah,
I heard that
yeah,
was a very interesting way to approach
yeah,
music.
strange. It was, how can I describe it? If you cup your hands over your ears and try to figure out what people are saying, that's what it was. It was like trying to listen to something in a pool of water, which it really was. It was fluid kind of blocking the hearing. So that was remedied through surgery, and I was able to hear and then learn English. But the music and vibrations of sound were probably my first language. So it kind of comes as no surprise to me now, even at 59, that still is my first language. The comfort zone is in the music. It wasn't, though, for many years, because I was inhibited from not being able to express myself from what I felt inside. And I overcame that over time, and I had a good teacher for that, several good teachers for that. And studied with a teacher locally, and then with Morton Estrin, American composer, pianist who specialized in works by living composers. That's what got that all going. And then Adele Marcus at the Juilliard School. So it was quite a training, rigorous, and it helped me considerably to get out of that inhibition and express myself
And
through
did you
the
have
music.
all of your training in the New York tri-state area?
Yes. Everything was locally on Long Island, and then with Adele Marcus in New York at her apartment, and also at the Juilliard School for the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs.
A New Yorker through and through. Wonderful. And from New York to the world.
Oh, yeah.
So what was your first experience on the concerto stage?
First time I ever played a concerto was a movement of a concerto. It was Saint-Saëns Concerto Number 2 in G minor, just the first movement, though. And the conductor was Tanya Leon, composer, who was assisting Laszlo Halas with an orchestra in Long Island called the Concert Orchestra of Long Island. And she was his assistant, and she conducted. I still tell her, because we're both colleagues at Brooklyn College at the Conservatory of Music, I say, I'll never forget that. You're still my first maestro.
You never forget
Always
your first
will be.
performance, especially of a work as grand as the Saint-Saëns.
But then the first time I actually played a full concerto, I mean, I learned concertos when I was younger. I did the Mendelssohn G minor when I was 11, and Mozart 459 F major, same year. But I didn't perform them with orchestra. I did second piano accompaniment with me. And first time I played a full concerto, well, it wasn't until May of 1983. Believe it or not. And that was the Prokofiev Second Concerto, Number 2 in G minor also. Something with Number 2 in G minor. And that was with Sixten Ehrling conducting the Juilliard Philharmonia. So that was like my first full concerto performance. I mean, I went from not doing any really until to that. So I worked my way up to that. It was such a treat to be able to hear an orchestra play along with me.
So what's it like?
We had a
you
great
study
time.
your whole life to get to that point. You train as an individual, and then all of a sudden you're making music with a symphony orchestra. How does that feel to be a concerto soloist for the people in the audience who may not know?
It's a lot of fun. It's like just big chamber music. And I find that I listen so much more doing concertos because you have to be so sensitive to every entrance and every nuance of the orchestra. A conductor can do something just at the spur of the moment, and you have to be able to adjust to that. It's kind of like actors who have to be sympathetic to the people delivering their lines around them. So it's not really just what I have to do, but I have to weave what I'm doing within the sound world that they're doing. So I find that that's the biggest challenge, but it's a lot of fun to do the concertos. I really do enjoy them, and I think since the pandemic, I've been doing more solo, obviously, work and teaching it and performing it much more. I mean, really doing a lot of pieces I have not had a chance to uh, perform because the concerto world is much stronger for performing than the recital world is, although that could turn around from all
There may
of
be
this.
less. It may take longer for orchestras
We'll
to come
see.
back together. Certainly, chamber music's I think going to be first because of the. It just makes sense that that may be the first step back is smaller ensembles, smaller groups, smaller gatherings in smaller places until things are given the green light.
No, it depends. If science gets to the point where we can get that green light, they'll try to get back as well as they can and as safely as possible. So we really don't know. I mean, it would be nice that when it all comes back, that there's a good, fair balance of the different performing venues that we could do with solo or chamber music and concertos.
In your
So
performing career,
yeah, we'll see.
what percentage of your work is your practice is concerto rep versus solo rep versus recitals? How do you balance your schedule as a performer?
I think in the world of performing, most of the work is concertos. It definitely is that way. There are fewer recitals today than there used to be. And when we were younger, we focused more on the solo repertoire because you needed to do that in your schooling. You didn't play with the orchestras unless there was a competition and you won it. And you would do mostly your recitals, your jury exams for school. It would be solo repertoire. Competitions would be all solo repertoire unless you made it to the final round. And that doesn't always happen for all of us. It just does not. There's been plenty of competitions I didn't get to the finals. Then there'd be the ones that I would get to and I would win them. Uh, that's the way it is. But I would say most of it is concerto based. And because there's so many people playing the standard repertoire, I had to figure out a way. Well, you can't work enough unless you can doing just standard repertoire. But where I fit in at the time that I came into the profession, there was still Horowitz was out there, Sirkin, Brendel, and all the big names were still grabbing all the dates. And here I was a new one. I was an American, and there weren't that many American pianists really having full-fledged performing careers. Not enough. And so I thought, well, I love doing new things too. And it was my second teacher, Morton Estrin, who sent me to one of his friends, Meyer Kupferman, the composer, to play. I learned a brand new sonata he wrote in 1973. It's on my website, the Sonata Mystico. So the performance of that was when I was about, I think, 16. And we put it on the website. And that, to play for the composer, was quite a revelation. To get feedback from the composer was wow.
I'm reading your website
can't call
one of the
Beethoven,
quotes,
but I can.
Quote that Leonard Bernstein made about you it must have been really, you must have really been, what a great testament from Bernstein. According to Leonard Bernstein, he played the Liszt, and he's a splendid musician and a brilliant performer. What was it like playing for Leonard Bernstein?
It was fun. That was 1985, the fall of 85, 35 years ago. Almost. And it was the president of the Juilliard School was Dean Gideon Waldrop, became the acting president when Peter Menon was no longer with us. And Dr. Waldrop called me one day and said, would you play for this event for Leonard Bernstein? They're honoring him, Museum of Broadcasting at the St. Regis Hotel. And his manager called me, Harry Kraut called and asked if I could recommend our best students to perform there. And he just asked for one. I'm calling you. Would you like to play for this? And a lot of people will be there. And I said, yeah. So my teacher, Adele Marcus, says, go, you'll play the 12th Hungarian Rhapsody of Liszt. And I did. And I was nervous, but he was sitting just like maybe 6 feet away. And we had social distancing then. So he was sitting just 6 feet away. And it was awesome. I wasn't nervous. I just felt like I'm going to give you my best. And he's inspired me so much as a musician. And I played, and it was so nice. And he thanked everybody for being there after. And I just sat there in my chair. And if you could have seen like water melt in a seat, he said, who could forget Jeffrey Biegel's performance of the Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody? I haven't heard a performance like that since Van Cliburn was young and performed it. Okay. I mean, this is like, whoa, I was I was just taken, I was kind of in shock. I was like, did he really say that? No, you're hearing things. Something's wrong here. But it was really very nice. And he wrote a very kind recommendation that you just read the quote from as part of a letter to Dr. Waldrop in support of my application for the William Petchik Piano Debut Award at the Juilliard School, which was a wonderful opportunity that the Petchik family gave to Juilliard for a pianist to do a New York debut in Alice Tully Hall. One a year. I was the third one. I got it. And I was so happy and so honored that Juilliard gave that honor to me. And that was the debut. And the next morning, the review came out in the New York Times from Donald Hanahan, and I didn't know he was there. It was my piano tuner, Steve Burrell, who was head of concert and artists for Steinway and then Baldwin. He was friends of Hanahan and invited. He says, I want you to go hear this kid. I was 24. And the review came out the next morning. I have to tell you, if I knew, and I knew he was a tough critic, if I knew he was in the audience, I would have been really more nervous than I already was. But I just remember that debut as an experience, looking back from backstage out to see who was there. I put it together. It was sold out. I had bus trips coming in from Long Island, from libraries and high schools. And it's just like everybody was coming in. My teacher was being escorted in by a former student, and my family was there. It was like a wedding. It was like marrying the piano tonight, you know. It was so nice. The review was really good. So, but that was the beginning. You know, I looked at life now very differently than I did back then, because back then, great review. I'm going to have management. I'm going to be a big career is going to happen. Boom, 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 boom. You're a star. No, you're not. You're not. you just, I look at it more like the Yellow Brick Road. Everything goes back to the Wizard of Oz now. The Yellow Brick Road. And I had to start taking my first steps on my Yellow Brick Road. Everybody else has a different one. And
so tell us about in your incredible journey. Tell us about your endeavors into new music, to premiering, into meeting composers, working with composers. There's an incredible part of your career.
Yeah. Well, playing for Meyer Kupferman, his new sonata back in 1973 was an eye-opener. Just having that feedback was so important. After that, it was learning new music for competitions in the 1980s, but we didn't meet the composers, John Cage and other composers, so we didn't meet them, but learned the music for the competitions. But then there was 1988. I met Harold Severud, Norwegian composer. He was like 90 or 91, and I learned his Ballad of Revolt. And I wish I met him before I played it. After I played it, he grabbed my arm and he says, "You know what those accents are for?" I said, "No." He says, "Gunshots in the war." Where are you going to get that from except from the composer? And then in 1992, I met Lalo Schifrin. He came to hear me play his piano concerto with the Honolulu Symphony. And our mutual friend was the conductor, Donald Johannos. He was fabulous. We did Prokofiev 3 before that. Then we did the Schifrin number 2. And it was a Steinway Foundation commissioned concerto that Stephen Huff premiered in 91. and it was composed to commemorate the 500th anniversary of Columbus discovering America. I think the Schifrin Number 2 is probably one of the top American piano concertos of the 20th century. You have Gershwin, of course. There's many others, but then Samuel Barber stands out. And I have to say the Schifrin Number 2 is remarkable because it has all the elements, all the styles in there. It's fantastic. So Lalo was there, and then a few years later, he invited me to Germany to record it with him conducting. We had done the Beethoven Emperor Concerto when he was conducting the Glendale Symphony. So Lalo he's still with us. He's one of the most brilliant composers around. So that concerto, then I decided I think it was November of 98 to start commissioning music. And I went to all the conductors that I knew from orchestras, administrators, and people I knew who might be able to fund the down payment for the composer, and started building the commission slowly. And I think the Ellen Taif's Willig Millennium Fantasy Project was the first largest consortium of orchestras put together. We covered 25 states, and there were 27 orchestras. And I know around the same time, Russell Peck, the composer, was doing a multi-orchestra project too for his own music. So he had a bunch of orchestras going on. So we were trying to do this. And what was interesting about it is that it saves orchestras money by not having to pay so much per orchestra, and they're part of the package. So they get to be part of commissioning. But
that's a great idea, because there must always there's always a financial challenge for orchestras to make these things come alive. So was it your idea to start that process of being involved in the compositions and helping make those avenues open up?
Well, I did all the administrative. Got all the orchestras to join the troupe. And foundations. Didn't grant write, though. No grant writing. That scares me for the commissions, because if you have to wait a long time for a grant and they say no for whatever reason, that's lost money. You can't, you have to find it other ways. But I still think the best way is through, personal contacts and friends who want to be supportive. Their names, if they wish, are then listed in the detail page of the score before the music starts, and the conductor's score. So the donors are listed, and all the orchestras are listed, and the description of the piece, the instrumentation, the duration. And I think the more orchestras you get involved in the project, it's just financially more feasible for them. It also gets the piece out there more. I mean, yeah, I'm going to play them, but that's only going to last a season or two to maybe 3. And then other people get to play it too, because I only get the exclusivity for 2 or 3 seasons. So after that was premiered, Ellen Willig's Millennium Fantasy premiered Cincinnati Symphony. And that was a nice story how that all came about, but it happened. And I decided to do another project and turned to Charles Strauss, the Broadway composer, who was a pupil of Aaron Copland and Nadja Boulanger, and he wrote Concerto America. Now that was a letter that went out to every orchestra in the country around the beginning of 2001. And that was supposed to be the first 50-state project. And I had a couple of orchestras on board, and Charles was writing the piece, and then 9/11 happened. I decided to put the brakes on the project, but we did perform it. He saw the buildings fall, and he put that in the piece. It's a very beautiful piece. The Boston Pops agreed to do the premiere with me in June of 2002, and Keith Lockhart conducted. He did a fantastic job. And so then I decided to wait a little and start a new project in 2003. And that was with Lowell Lieberman. So Lowell wrote his 3rd concerto, we went to Juilliard together. Fabulous, incredible piano concerto. I think every young pianist should put that into their repertoire as they would Prokofiev 3 or Bartok or Rachmaninoff 3. It's a very powerful piece. And that was the first project, I believe, of any American composer to be co-commissioned by an orchestra outside of the United States. I brought an orchestra in from Germany and did 5 performances with them. And then after Lowell's project came, Richard Danielpour wrote a concerto for me, and Bill Bolcom's choral work for piano, orchestra, and chorus. That was co-commissioned by several orchestras and one in Canada, Calgary Philharmonic with chorus, another orchestra in Canada outside the U.S. And that was tough. It was mostly the Canadian orchestras will commission their own composers, but they came on board, as did Niagara Symphony, came on board with the next Willick project, the Shadows Concerto, and that brought in a bunch of orchestras. And then came Jake Runestad, who's a rising, he was a young kid back, he's 25. And I knew he'd do something incredible. We met in Minneapolis. I said, I want you to be my next composer. He was the first young composer that I commissioned, and he wrote
I saw that
Dreams
at
of
the
the Fallen,
conference. That
which
was
is brilliant for
gorgeous.
piano.
Yep.
Did you? It was Dreams of the Fallen for piano, orchestra, and chorus. And we did that at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. And hopefully we'll record that in a couple of years. And beautiful piece, really powerful piece. Lucas Richmond's piano concerto called In Truth, one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever played. That was premiered in Knoxville and recorded with Pittsburgh Symphony. Then there's Christopher Theophanidis wrote his second concerto for me for piano, strings, harp, percussion, and Peter Schickele, PDQ Bach, wrote his concerto for simply grand piano and orchestra we've done as far as Finland. And there's then Kenneth Fuchs. And Ken and I went to Juilliard together. I know him from way back when he was working in the dean's office and worked at Padelson's, and we stayed friends for over the years. And he wrote a beautiful piano trio for a group I had. But the concerto is really the crown jewel of his latest pieces. Although they're all fabulous, but that with his other works on the recording that was submitted for Grammy won Best Classical Compendium, the recording one. And it's a fabulous concerto based on paintings of Helen Frankenthaler and really, really, really beautiful Frankenthaler. Frankenthaler, I don't know how to pronounce it. But American abstract painter, beautiful, unusual work. And Ken just has this gift to make music out of her paintings. But that was a wonderful project to do with multiple orchestras, and also recorded with the London Symphony at Abbey Road Studios with Joanne Falletta conducting. Ken saved money from the commissioning and put it to the recording. And it's on
What
Knox.
was it like? Were you at the Grammys when that won the Grammy Award that year?
No. I think Ken went with Joanne. So it was so nice to see them when they announced that we went. My God,
Did you know that was a special when you were performing
for both of them?
The piece was coming together. Did you know that was going to be something special?
I knew it was a special piece, and I just thought, this is really quite a fabulous concerto. I mean, I know people hate labeling, but I call it one of the newer works in the neo-impressionist style. Why I say that, it's a lot of modal scales in there. Kind of harkens back to the modes that the Impressionists used. Satie, Ravel, Debussy, they come to mind immediately, don't they? But in a refreshing new way, and the way it's instrumentated and the way the piano is used, it's just really brilliantly written. And I knew it was something special would happen with this concerto. And hopefully get to play it more. I'm supposed to play it in Florida
You do so much
next
new
year.
music. What are some of the challenges of approaching new music, a new concerto that you've never done before, as opposed to the standard rep which you've been engaged with for your whole career? What's it like learning a new concerto?
Yeah. Well, way back, you didn't have anything to go by. You just learned it. The first thing we had with Ellen Swillick's Millennium Fantasy was a floppy disk, and you could hear, like, for repeating notes, it would go dig, 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 dig. It was like really weird. It was a different sound, and she hated it. But it helped me a lot to at least hear the harmonies and where the piano fit in. And I would play along with that. And then technology improved, and you'd get some synthesized demos, and they would sound a little better, MIDI, whatever. Composers don't like it, but I do, because it gave me at least something to hear, to listen to the structure of the piece harmonically, and melodically and rhythmically. And so it's a little easier now to learn new pieces because you have something to go by, but still you have to bring something unique to it. It's just like you wonder about songs that you hear songs from the 50s and the 60s and people sing them and you know them, but those artists had to be the first ones to put their stamp on it. So they never heard it before. It was brand new for them. So, I often wonder, gee, what was it like for the Beatles to do the songs we know and love for the first time?
Question.
So it's very similar. But having composer feedback is very helpful. When I did Keith Emerson's concerto, he was there to give feedback. Neil Sedaka and the Manhattan Intermezzo, he sent to me. And he was a pupil of Neil Sedaka, the pop song writer, singer, gorgeous voice, was a pupil of Edgar Roberts at pre-college Juilliard and Adele Marcus in the college division. He's still every day on his mini concerts, on all his social media, he's throwing in. Today he did the Black Key, he did a little of Chopin and Ravel Sonatine yesterday, and he does Debussy and Mozart and all kinds of things. So he still has his fingers in the classics. But his Manhattan Intermezzo, I just added a few bells and whistles to it, and he asked me to play it for him first, and I did. And he approved, so I love playing that. I'm supposed to play that in, where am I playing that? In, what's that? Slipping my mind, in Colorado. It's like this city in Colorado, the Grand Junction. I'm supposed to play that there with the Peanuts Concerto. That's another new piece, working with Dick Tunney, the arranger, for different concertos based on popular themes of the Burt Bacharach Concerto, the Monkees Concerto, the Peanuts Concerto. They're really fun. It's just
do you
fun
enjoy
to do
the crossover
different
pops
things.
type of this type of programming? Have you enjoyed that in your travels?
Yeah, and audiences do too. Claude Bowling's Suite for Flute and Jazz Piano, great combo piece. And my buddy in Colorado also, he's in Colorado Springs, Steve Barta, added orchestra to it with Claude Bowling's approval. And it's fun to do. There's one composer I'd love to really talk to is George Gershwin. I really would. Really, for the Rhapsody in Blue. I mean, I'm playing now the new critical edition, which is what was exactly composed in 1924. And those scores are great. I'm supposed to record it this past May, but we'll work on that once the smoke clears, hopefully get that out there too. But it's a different experience. It's a different lightness. It's a different sound. But I'd like to.
Which orchestration are you going to record
him about that. It's the original Grofé 1924. Very original, but original. First one based on their manuscripts. And that E major theme, that was not what George wrote originally. That'd be another podcast. We could talk about that. An interview that Grofé had with someone, and he was saying, that's not what he wrote. It's on YouTube. You can listen to him speaking. That's not what he wrote. He played something else, and Freddie Grofé was like, what else you got? So he just pulled this thing out. He says, well, I wrote this in 1919, Yeah, I was thinking about that. 1919 was Swanee, Blue Monday, other things George Gershwin was composing, and they had the pandemic in 1918 and 19. They were going through this, and so I often wonder how were they living through it? How was he writing all this? Was he writing with things getting performed, or what were they doing, and how far?
I've been researching
across
that
the
a bit
country
because
did it go?
my summer job at Ocean Grove, I trying to figure out how do we plan a season when this organization's been here since 1869. So I'm like, well, they must have minutes from 1918 with the Spanish flu, and I found out that the Met didn't cancel a single performance during Spanish flu, for example. So maybe that's why 50 million people died. But
they could have just not unknowingly spread it more. It could be. So here we are in 2020. Projects that were in the works and now just moved further ahead into the future, but definitely there. Composer Daniel Pertu has already composed the Planet's Odyssey for piano and orchestra, which is me being the space traveler through the solar system, taking this theme as the seed. It was an idea that I presented to him. I had this idea of a new planets, not in any way to be
That was
referred
my
to or
question.
compared to Gustav Holst's, but brand new. Brand new. And he did a beautiful job. It's a great piece. And it goes all the way into the outside into the solar system and things that pertain to what we know now. So that will be with the Canton Symphony Orchestra in, not in China, in Ohio, with Gerhard Zimmerman conducting. And it was supposed to be in November, will be hopefully next June. Jim Stevenson, wonderful composer. He's writing a new concerto that should be done with the New Hampshire Festival Orchestra in the summer of 21. And, oh my goodness, what was I'm probably missing something. When I'm under pressure, I forget things. But there's also the 2023 project I'm working on. Well, no, actually before that, there's another one for 21. And Iranian composer Farhad Pupel. We've been talking, and he's based in Tehran. And he is a pharmacist and a part-time composer whose music has been performed in Europe and also with the Windsor Symphony in Canada. And one of my friends, Robert Franz, with whom he conducted an orchestra Mansfield in Ohio when we did Lowell Lieberman's third concerto way back. And he and I have stayed friends over the years. And he would like for them to be the world premiere. So I call it the world premiere designate orchestra and chorus, because we basically have the time period. It should be fall of 21, but we have to make sure that it's safe for the choruses to come back and sing out without worry. So hopefully that will happen during that season. But they are the world premiere designate, meaning they're designated to do the world premiere whenever it shall be. So I actually have permission from Robert today, thank you for that, to share that. So it's that, and then, well, Rhapsody in Blue turns 100 in 2024. I've had my eye on that for 2 years, and I started last year a commissioning project for that, and want to do, and I'm going to announce it now, a 50-state project, perhaps global, depending on how things develop, to not only celebrate the centennial of Rhapsody in Blue with the new critical edition or just the standard, what everybody knows, the 1942 Grofé. Orchestra could choose the 24 or the 27 score or the 1942. They could do whatever they wish, but celebrating it with, or just without doing the Gershwin, a new work called Rhapsody. I'm going to say this, Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. Okay. I have the composer. I won't mention his name yet because we're not there yet. I mean, he is more on board now than he had been, but he was at first a little leery to be compared to the Gershwin. I said, well, you don't need to worry about that because it shouldn't be compared. It's 100 years later. American music has changed. It's not changed, but evolved. And you're going to put your own feeling into the piece. It's going to be your Rhapsody in Red, White, and Blue. So, well, not even to be compared to Gershwin. I'll say what Ravel said to Gershwin. When George Gershwin went to Paris to study with Ravel, he wanted to learn more about orchestration and everything. Maurice Ravel looked at him and said, let me ask you something, Mr. Gershwin. How much money do you make? I hear you're a big star there. And he told him, and Ravel said to him, my gosh, I should be studying with you. But there's something that Ravel said to Gershwin, which was very important. And it's kind of what I was saying to the composer of this new piece. Ravel said to him, it's better for you to be a first-rate Gershwin than to be a second-rate Ravel. So I'm just saying to this composer, better to be a first-rate who you are than a second-rate Gershwin. Don't try to do anything that he did. It pertained to then. Those were dances in the 1920s that he did. the lightness of his music. He was kind of tipping his hat to Ravel and Debussy and Chopin, and he has some Jewish dances in there like the Freilauf and the Kozatsky. You're not doing that. That's Rhapsody in Blue. Yours is going to be a totally different piece, and everything that has happened in our country since then will be reflected in that. And so just make something brand new. That's all you.
And how
All
exciting to
you
bring
and
a
all
new
America.
piece to the repertoire. It's always exciting to bring new works to life, to broaden the repertoire. You engage with such wonderful composers. Do you have any great composer stories? Some of the composers you've worked with that you want to share?
Not really. The one thing I will say that it's one of the most incredible things is when you bring their piece to life at the first rehearsal and they're there. And they're out there with the score on the big stand and they're making markings. And then as you're playing, they come up to you. They come up and say what they think, what they want. Less here, more there. I need more left hand from the pianist. Don't force it so hard. It's coming out in the hall. Don't try to play over the orchestra. Um, Little things like that. It's really nice. And then, of course, when you perform the piece and they come running onto the stage and you give them that hug, it's like you've helped bring a new child into the world for them, one of their babies. And that's very rewarding, to bring new music. It's really, and the thing that I do stress with composers, because, from the very beginning, you don't want there to be any levels of who has input. I don't touch any of it. I just say to them, you compose, and then they'll say, I'm going to do my thing, and then live with it a little. If you find anything's really difficult, tell us. So I say to composers, something, this isn't about me. This isn't about you. And they're like, well, it's my piece. I said, this is not about us. This is about the music. This is about the future of your piece. You compose something that you want heard in 100 years from now. You won't be here to see it. I won't be here either. But you want to compose something that you will make possible, will stand the test of time. Who knows? There's music that only now is starting to realize by certain composers that were not popular in their day. This is just the nature of it. Music was panned by critics. The lexicon of the modern invective, that book, there's like panning Brahms, panning this one, hating everything. The composer Cesar Cui panned Rachmaninoff's First Symphony, sent him into a depression. I mean, music is not always adored when it's premiered, but I have to say, most of the new works by composers these days, the critics are really writing wonderful things about the music. It's been consistently accepted, accessible, and on a very high level, and they'll be around. There's some great
I think
composition going on.
When some people hear modern music, they think atonal. They think that the '60s atonal composers. I think we've shifted quite a long way. There's still some of that being written, but we've shifted a long way from that concert model.
Well, Ken Fuchs said, he studied at Juilliard and he couldn't do what he does now in that studio. They wouldn't have let him. You had to follow a certain protocol of tradition at that time. But I think every period is experimental in and of itself. Even Beethoven, he experimented with things until he kept evolving, and the instruments evolved also. So I think composers do the same thing. I think that the atonal still exists. There are composers that are still writing this way because it speaks to them, and that's their voice. But for the most part, I see a lot more tonal, romantic, impressionist, classic melody coming back, and harmony, but in a new way and rhythmically. And it's the instrumentation also that's expanded, use of different percussion instruments and combinations of instruments. So it just keeps evolving. I say, we're all kind of part of this continuum, and we're just part of the evolving of music, part of its evolution. So we do what we can to keep that going. So new
I
music is
think it's
part
a
of that
wonderful.
train.
It's wonderful you've been able to engage so much in that, and how you've able to do your traditional repertoire, Western repertoire, mixed in with new things, and like a healthy diet in your career. And
Yeah,
so, what have you been doing
sure.
during the heat of the pandemic?
Last concert I did was Ken Fuchs Concerto with the Punta Gorda Symphony. It was Raphael Ponti conducting. It was March 8th or 9th or whatever around there. And I was in the airport wearing a mask because I knew something wasn't right. A lot of people were not wearing masks. And I thought something's not right. And I got back and went to Brooklyn College the next day, and we had a class, and head of the piano department said, I don't know if we're going to be meeting again here. Just keep your eyes open. Sure enough, everything went virtually the day after. And that Friday, I think it was that Saturday, March 14th, I think it was my wife and son said, why don't you go play? Play on YouTube, play on Facebook, play something live. So I did. And I played some pieces. I did Chopin G minor ballade, and I did something else. And then I did Rhapsody in Blue, solo version. That became concert number one, concert at home, concert for hope, whatever, at home. I've done 15 of them so far. I did 14 in a row and then stopped. And I started teaching and performing for the Sonata Piano Camp, which is also sonatinic. If you go to, usually people who are pianists, amateurs, teachers, even some students, go to sonatina.com. Polly Vanderlinde has been running this. Her mom started it over 50 years ago. I never went there as a youngster, but I have to say, I've taught there since last year, live in person in Vermont. Polly took it all online. She made them all virtual, where everybody was a little leery about it, but she did a remarkable job. It's remarkable. The group discussions, everybody on Zoom, sharing all these conversations about so many things. And the lectures by the faculty, nightly recitals. Polly does master classes, individual lessons. It's incredible. She's been doing it since April. We have another big sonata. It's called Sonata Camp. We have a big one coming up next week. She's doing them every month. And the kids usually have a month up there, but she had to go virtual, so she shortened it to a week. And I taught for Sonatina Camp too, and the young people, they go to Manus and pre-college, and they're from everywhere. Even somebody from England was there. And doing it all virtually was remarkable. But in between all of that, it's also forced me to do a lot of solo rep for those recitals for the camp. I've also taught for Inside Music Academy that Anthea Creston runs, done some teaching for the pianists there. And she's done a fabulous job, too, doing what's Inside Music Academy. It's all virtual, mostly all string instruments. So she had me teaching some of the piano students, and it was great. I've also done a little composing. And it was March 27th, and I actually saw a photo of someone's little dog hiding under a blanket. And I felt so bad, I thought, that poor little dog. And I guess maybe they thought it was funny, but I thought, no, the way I took it was, no, that little dog is hiding. They know something's not right. I noticed, and I sense with my pets too, something's not right. And so I pushed me to the piano to write a Waltz of Hope. And I did. That was March 27. And I look back now and playing it, I hear, it's very constricted. It's very yearning. It's trying to reach out from like being under a dome, searching and hoping, it's very, very dark piece in a way, little glimmers of hope. Then April 12, I wrote Waltz number 2 because I had a family member who had COVID and she's okay. But when I was going through all that, I just went back to the piano and heard all this in my head and wrote Waltz for Hope number 2, Waltz of Hope. And it's in the major key, and it's reaching out a little more. It's more hopeful and just imagining, she'll be okay, and kind of just a dreamier piece, more dreaming of not being helpless, but being hopeful. So I have those two pieces. I'd be happy to play and fit them into this
to internalize
program.
what's going on around than to put them into music. We're delighted to hear that for our audience. Thank you so much.
Let's do it. Okay. I'll move the chair. Chair's out of the way. Put this over here. And here's waltzes 1 and 2.
bravo. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. Very personal, intimate performance of those pieces. It's beautiful, beautiful, heartfelt, and thank you so much for sharing those.
Thank you. Yeah, it's easy to look back now and put adjectives and descriptions as to, why is the theme in the first one more close, the intervals closer, more subdued, more, not as open, more yearning, but like crying out, as compared to the second one, which is reaching out a little more, thinking, is there a light at the end? Will we get through this light at the end of the tunnel? More reaching out in a way, but in a little bit more of a, is there a smile there? So, yeah, and I didn't write another one after that because I think that was it. I mean, that's all I really felt I needed to. With me, composing is not a daily, you have to go and compose. You have to do it. It's your job. And you have to evolve yourself as a composer. For me, it's just, if I feel it, I do it. It's not a daily regimen. But it just hit me those 2 times, and that's it. That's how I used to write choral music, too. It would just be, I feel like it. So, it's almost like a hobby that you have when you feel like it.
When you get that urge and you get that the inspiration, it comes on the page. Well, thank you so much for sharing those with our audience. We had one of our audience members, Robin, that wanted you to know that she really loves your Christmas albums.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Yeah, there's 2 of those. There's the Steinway Christmas, which came after the classical carols, which are beautiful pieces. They're classical music fused with Christmas music. So Carolyn Taylor did such a brilliant job. She heard the 2 together harmonically at the same time. So she would put them together somehow. It was a brilliant
What year
recording.
were those
I really
recordings
enjoyed doing that. Classical Carols was on the Koch label, and that was in like 2007 or so. I think Steinway Christmas was the second recording I did for Steinway and Sons. First was Bach on a Steinway in 2010, and the Steinway Christmas album was after that, I think 2011. And it comes up every year. It's nice to see it still get some play. So, and that was a fun project because I just kind of went right to Facebook and said, any composers, arrangers, what do you have? If you'd like to be part of this project, let me know. And it's getting so many nice pieces, and really learned almost everything that was sent through. And some made the cut just because it was timing. The producers would say, well, we can't put everything in there. So that was fun to do. It was a mixture of classics, Sleigh Ride from Leroy Anderson, that a lot of pianists are tackling now. It's Andrew Gentile's arrangement. He's an old friend of mine from 3 years old when we grew up together. And he did that. And I did a few arrangements of songs. I did the Old Lang Syne arrangement and David Foster's Grown Up Christmas List, and Hampton Calloway's Christmas Lullaby, and Mel Torme's Christmas Song. I got them all in there. But the rest are all like by Franz Liszt and Liapunov, is it? There's a bunch of composers, Tchaikovsky, all classics.
How do you find the inspiration to do new things? You've been in music for your whole life, and you've been in the career, you're in the heart of your career. How do you keep yourself energized?
Prayer. You just keep going. One of my sisters once said, keep going. You just keep going. And I think that's what it is. You just have to, I always say, whenever I think something's like, oh, gee, I always think, oh, it could be much worse. Whenever you think nothing is bad, it could be much worse, and it can be much worse. Everything could be much worse, short of the end. So I kind of say, you just count your blessings. And, every little ache and pain or concert that's canceled, what are you going to do? Stay alive, stay safe, that's all. And listen to the doctors and just be patient with it. And, I have to say, I told Polly from the Sonata Camp, I said, you saved many lives with this virtual camp. It's just been a wonderful thing to do. And teaching virtually, a lot of people were, I don't know about this, but it works. And she'll be doing them virtually through the year. So I I strongly suggest them. It's just a wonderful way to deal with what's going on, but keeping your love of music alive. That's what's so important is how do we have to stay safe. Okay. Masks, gloves, everything. I put vegetable plastic container things. I put everything on the shopping cart when I go in, still spraying them. I treat it like day one. But musically, we still have to have that in our lives somehow. So how can we do it and make it work until such time that we can go back to where we were somehow? And there really is no other way to do it. So we do our best. And teaching at Brooklyn College will be virtual as well. We start in a couple of weeks, have some new students and some graduate students continuing, bachelor's degree students continuing. They're great kids. I really love that group. And so, continuing on there, it'll be 22 years at Brooklyn College, but we've had some wonderful people coming in and out of there, and some of them having wonderful careers.
Well, they're very fortunate to have you as a teacher.
Well.
Your positivity and your energy is so contagious, and you can just tell your love for music is, some people love themselves in the music. You obviously are a servant of that music. You can just tell by hearing you.
Yeah, yeah, we do our best. I mean, I had a teacher who you weren't allowed to think any other way. It was all about the music, and
ultimately, we're servants of the music and the people we serve.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
the job.
Absolutely. I remember being in Ocean Grove many years ago with Father Alphonse Stevenson conducting the orchestra there. We did Rhapsody in Blue in that big wooden auditorium.
I've been the director
Fabulous,
at Ocean Grove Great Auditorium for
place,
14. This is my 14th season, so this has been an all virtual season. We have a huge
fantastic.
choral tradition down here, and we've done weekly choir anthems virtually. We have 60 to 80 people sending in files, and my son does all the editing, and we were up till 3 o'clock in the morning every night editing files of singers and musicians. And
That's huge. One of my students at the college, Harrison Scheckler, did this. He did You'll Never Walk Alone. You probably saw that. It topped over 1 million viewers. And Harrison, they were supposed to perform in Carnegie Hall, the Brooklyn Choir and the orchestra and everything. And that got canceled. So he grabbed all those kids, and then he got like over 300 people from all over the world to send in things, and they did You'll Never Walk Alone. You got to see that. And then he just did You'll Take Me Out to the Ball Game with some ball players. He did. So he's fabulous. He's a great pianist, but he's got a mind to he's just been so positive about how to deal with all this. And when I teach him, even virtually, it just brings a smile to my face to teach him, because he makes you feel positive about what's going on and how to deal with it and how to work around it. So I always say this. I always say we learn from our students too.
That's what I love about music is you're never there. You're always evolving and growing. Even with the music you've done before, you're always looking at it a different way.
Absolutely.
It's like watching a great painting, and the perspective changes.
Well, yeah. Even last week I played a Brahms intermezzo, and I took a slower tempo. It sounded fine. And then I put the metronome on it, and I said, boy, that's too slow. So I sped it up a little, and it felt better the week later. It's just, you never know, from day to day, your pulse changes. And, in my teaching, I found virtual teaching, I've become a different kind of teacher. I teach students how to, go play that in the air, get away from the piano. Do you go swimming over the summer? Play a piece in the pool, feel the legato in the water. Or I'll say, don't use that tempo for that piece. It's too fast. They're like, no, but if it's exciting. I said, for you, not the listener. And they don't understand why. I'll say, because their heart can't beat as fast as you're playing. You're going to lose them in 2 measures. I said, it's not exciting if they can't breathe with it. It's more about the listener than the performer. So I'm always learning new things in teaching, but teaching virtually is a different dynamic. You have to work around not having them here in the room. So, you have to get your point across to a microphone on a computer or a cell phone.
Well, so, certainly, what advice do you have for young people coming up in the music world today?
Keep doing it because you love it. Just keep that candle burning. Just the passion should always be there. You always have to be passionate about what you're doing. Be patient, which I was not. Be patient with it. Don't give up on things too soon, and be friends with your colleagues, not only your instrument, but also if they're dancers, or you go play for ballet classes, learn how to phrase with dancers, be friends with the singers, be friends with the orchestra players, be friends with the composers, because you never know, in 15, 20 years, they're going to be superstar composers and you're going to want to commission them to write your piece. So be friends with as many people as you can. If they, it's like a puzzle, and there's so many pieces to it. And if there are pieces in your puzzle, nurture it and keep it part of your puzzle, and keep them on your yellow brick road. They meet new people on the yellow brick road, and they become a team. So, make your team. And I think that's important, aside from the business of music. I think the joy of music becomes your business of music. And I think that's kind of all I could tell them, is just do it for the right reasons and be who you are, know thyself, play the way you feel best, go through every edition you possibly can and then come up with your own that makes sense to what the composer wants. A lot in my teaching young people today is just because there's a pedal mark or a dynamic indication or a presto written there, and it was written during the 1800s, don't always think it's going to apply exactly that way to your instrument, because they didn't have your instruments until the late 1880s. So, always be mindful about the instruments you're playing, because then we could say everything we're playing by Beethoven is a transcription on the modern piano. So it's just becoming wise about it and being open-minded about music. So
sage advice. Thank you so much for
say.
sharing that. And thank you so much for being on our show tonight. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, Jeffrey, and we wish you nothing but the best. How can people find out more about your work and about you as a person?
And you. Well, just the website. I kind of keep as up to date as possible. It's jeffreybeagle.com. There's a lot of videos there, performances, and also choral pieces that I've written and performed. Just go to YouTube and just look up my name. There's a lot of videos, but there's also a lot of audio. There's recordings that show up there.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you tonight, and I heard you might have some Schubert up your sleeve. Oh, Schumann.
Oh, Schumann. Oh, my gosh. You want the Schumann? Do you have time? Okay. Let's give this a tackle. This is a piece I learned when I was younger. I never performed it, and it's part of a set of Schumann pieces. And the first time I ever played it was last week. Just there's a group of them. They're from the Fantasy Stücke. This one is the Aufschwung, which is soaring. So let me grab that. It's a little dark in here, but I'm trying to work around it, so I'll try not to make too many boo-boos. I can't really see it.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. Thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight. Beautiful music to end broadcast. And I want to thank you, Jeffrey Beagle. Thank you so much. Continued success on your Yellow Brick Road.
And you too. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy to share all of these stories and music with you and with everyone that's taking time to join us in this evening and then watch it after it's recorded. So stay safe all, and we'll follow the Yellow Brick Road together.
Thank you for joining us for Music Matters 2020. Please remember to like, subscribe to us on YouTube, and hit that bell for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. This coming Thursday at 6 o'clock, we have a wonderful dramatic soprano, Alexandra Lobianco, who's taking the opera world by storm. She was supposed to be making her Metropolitan Opera lead debut this COVID era, but she's a regular at Chicago Lyric Opera and out west, and we'll be delightful to talk to her. It's been many years since I worked with her in New Jersey. So thank you so much for joining us, and remember, keep music alive. Good night.